Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're undertaking a really critical deep dive into a singular and I have to say deeply unsettling historical record.
That's a very challenging document to work with.
It is. It's a first-hand account that pulls back the curtain on a truly disturbing reality that governed a major megalopolis. It's a world where the basic laws of nature were, it seems, fundamentally altered by political necessity. So our mission today is pretty straightforward. We're treating this document as an objective primary source. We're going to extract every verifiable fact we can about this unique society and the processes it used.
And that's really the key here. What makes this record so crucial for historical analysis isn't just the sheer strangeness of the reality it details. It's the meticulous, almost numb way the unnamed witness chronicles it all.
Right.
This is a future society, and it's built on what the chronicler himself calls a frightening method, a method used to secure and maintain urban greenery.
And frightening method, what does that mean exactly?
Well, the core of the documentation, it focuses on the systematic transformation of living beings. We're talking both animals and humans into stationary-rooted, plant-like entities. It's environmental management through really absolute biological control.
So we have to establish the lexicon of this world right away because the terms themselves, they define the whole system of control.
They absolutely do.
We have to move away from any kind of conventional biology and into the state-defined terms. So we have pillars and trees.
Right. The initial state is the pillar. This is where you get the man pillar, the dog pillar, the cat pillar. And then there's the fully developed, fully rooted state, the tree.
The man tree, dog tree, and so on.
Exactly. And this classification system, this is the mechanism, is how living, breathing citizens are converted into, well, permanent fixtures of the landscape, fungible assets.
And the record gives us immediate context for why. Why would a society ever do this? And the documented reality points to just extreme environmental scarcity.
Extreme. The document notes that even the scanty green provided by the 10 or so trees in a residential park, that's deemed priceless.
Priceless. So the lack of natural resources must have reached a crisis point, a point where the state decided it was necessary to use sentient life as a substitute for, actual environmental policy.
It's a chilling measure of ecological collapse, really.
And this process, it leaves a footprint, a measurable chemical one. The physical evidence of this systematic vegetization, it's right there in the record from the start.
The witness details this faint, lingering smell of chlorine on the ground.
Chlorine?
Yeah, right after the liquid fertilizer truck has passed. And this chlorine, it's a documented component of the essential maintenance fluid. It's the lifeblood for these pillars.
So that tells us immediately this isn't organic, this isn't natural. The life that's sustaining these beings is synthetic. It's chemically dependent from day one.
That small detail, the smell of chlorine, it's a massive insight.
It really is.
It confirms this is an industrialized, state-managed chemical procedure. It's a system rooted in engineering and control, not biology.
Okay, let's unpack that. Let's get into the core mechanism that's established in this historical record. I think we need to analyze the transformation process itself, really define the stages of this vegetization and what the witness reports about the physical and cognitive changes it forces on people.
Right. So section 2 of the record is almost entirely dedicated to the mechanics of it. We start with the stages. The pillar phase, that's the transitional one.
Okay.
The entity is rooted, it's stationary, but it still has a degree of recognizable form. And crucially, consciousness, and often sensation.
So it's a halfway state.
It's a halfway state.
Yeah.
And the progression to a tree, the fully vegetized state, that's the culmination. That's the end goal of the process.
Right.
This is where you see physical features like leaves and branches actually sprouting from the body.
And the mind.
And the cognitive functions are reported to become plant-like.
Plant-like? What does that even mean?
Well, from the text, it implies the entity achieves a state of near total depersonalization, kind of tranquil emptiness.
And the science behind this planting is, well, it's critical to the state's control. It all relies on this liquid fertilizer.
Entirely. It's absorbed by roots that have sunk deep into the earth. But, and this is a key detail, the record immediately casts doubt on how effective, or maybe how prioritized, the state's maintenance actually is.
Right. The narrator, the witness, he observes that the fertilizer, while it's necessary, it may leave something to be desired.
And we know that means because the record provides specific examples.
The dog pillars.
The dog pillars, exactly. They're observed to have excellent appetites. They still need and accept food, like meat dumplings or bread, that are fed to them by citizens.
Which suggests the state's liquid nutrition just isn't enough.
It's either insufficient or it's not administered regularly enough. It implies a regime that provides the bare minimum for function, but certainly not for comfort.
Which brings us to probably the most horrifying discovery about this whole process, the accelerated path to becoming a man-tree.
Yeah.
The document reveals that vegetizing goes faster when you don't eat.
Mm-hmm. And that fact, it's not just a physical observation. It reveals a profound psychological mechanism at play.
A terrible choice.
It is. The process of starving oneself actually hastens the transformation. It offers an escape from the pain of hunger and, the residual emotional pain of being a conscious pillar. The state provides a perverse incentive for self-neglect.
So you're forced to choose. You can either live in the state of perpetual hunger and awareness, or you can accelerate your own depersonalization.
And the man-pillar postman, who we'll get to, he later suggests that the man-tree state is a release. It's release from sadness and hunger. So this voluntary act of fasting, it becomes a kind of self-euthanasia enabled and encouraged by the state system.
This technical analysis, it leads us right to a key historical anecdote that the narrator details, the case of his own dog, Buff.
Right. Buff was planted, but in a very remote location at the edge of a cemetery. And because the fertilizer trucks didn't go out that way often, and the narrator couldn't bring food every single day,
The dog died.
died almost immediately after planting. The failure was attributed to either, poor planting technique or, more likely, just a lack of consistent chemical and nutritional support.
And what happened to the body?
Well, this is where we see the society's total commitment to resourcefulness.
Mm.
Buff wasn't discarded, mainly because the remote location meant that decay and odor weren't an immediate public health problem.
So they just left him there.
He was left to dry out. And he became what the record calls a bone pillar.
A bone pillar.
And the record confirms this bone pillar now serves a strictly pragmatic purpose. It's used as material for neighborhood elementary school science classes.
So even a failed life process is repurposed by the state.
Nothing is wasted. It shows its complete state utility. A transition from organic life to essentially a teaching tool.
An object. It's a profound transition. It's literally in the school curriculum. Okay, let's move from the physical mechanism to the mechanisms of social and linguistic control documented here, starting with the immediate erasure of identity.
The first and most rigidly enforced law, you are forbidden from calling a pillar by its original name.
And this is where we see how linguistic control is used for social control. The record gives us the specific reason, right? It's articulated by this elderly gentleman, Hayama.
Yes. He explains that the laws that governed people were just, extended to dogs and other vegetized beings. And this resulted in the loss of names because, as he states, and this is a direct quote, there are no proper nouns for plants.
There are no proper nouns for plants. That one phrase, that might be the single most defining legal principle of this entire regime.
It's the cornerstone.
Once you're classified as vegetation, your identity, your proper noun, is legally erased. You can't be called by your old name. You can't get a new one. And that's functionally critical for the state because it justifies everything that comes next.
Absolutely. The erasure of the name shifts the public's perception. If it has no name, it holds no unique identity, and therefore it sheds all of its previous rights and protections as a citizen. The state is using semantics to justify cruelty.
And this depersonalization, it's not just legal, it's psychological. The narrator observes that man-pillars, they become expressionless very quickly. Their visible emotional range just diminishes.
And we have direct documented testimony of this from the man-pillar postman. He confirms this dramatic physical and mental shift. When he's asked about the pain of hunger or cold, he claims you don't feel it that much.
So the process itself is numbing. It's either numbing the central nervous system or at least the cognitive awareness of sensation.
The cognitive changes are even more critical to the state's objective, though. The postman openly admits that his thinking becomes pretty plant-like.
There's that word again, plant-like.
And we need to analyze what that actually means in this context. It seems to imply a reduction in complexity, an immediacy of need, sunlight, fertilizer, and, critically, the suppression of complex, politically dangerous emotions.
Like anger.
Especially anger. The postman provides undeniable evidence about this. He mentions these rumors that the state sometimes administers a lobotomy to people with radical ideas before they're planted, a kind of physical preemptive measure.
He didn't get one.
He confirms he did not. And yet, despite avoiding the surgery, he reports that a month after being planted, he didn't get angry anymore.
So the process itself is enough.
That's the key. It suggests the process of vegetization, the systemic removal of autonomy, the constant hunger, the physical rooting. It achieves the state's primary goal of ideological and emotional suppression, often without needing surgery for every single person. The body and mind simply resign.
This transition from the mechanics of personal change to the mechanics of political control, it seems seamless. It leads us right into the documented legal and political climate that determines who gets planted in the first place.
And the first thing is the pervasive surveillance. It's a constant refrain in the document. The elderly man, Hayama, he warns the narrator, saying, "You never know who might be listening, even here on the street."
So there's this universal ingrained fear that just defines all public interaction.
And that fear is entirely justified by the extremely low threshold for what's considered dissent. The documented infractions, they're often what we would consider trivial grievances, but they result in permanent, public, and painful punishment. The record is very specific about the criteria.
Okay, let's break them down. First, the most fundamental economic grievance.
Complaining about low pay.
Just that.
That was the explicit crime of the man-pillar postman. He confirms that his chief clerk and another neighbor suffered the exact same fate for the exact same reason. It confirms that criticizing economic policy, even just internally to your boss, is a planting offense.
All right, what's the second one?
Criticizing the government. And this is often coupled with complaining about high prices. This was the fate of Michiko, the narrator's wife.
And how was she caught?
She complained at a housewives' meeting. And the record confirms she was informed on by one of the other women there. This establishes the state's reliance on citizen denunciation as a core tool of surveillance.
You can't even trust your neighbors.
You can't. Then there's the third criterion, which shows the fear of intellectual assembly.
Which is?
Simply attempting to practice free assembly. The record is clear that even 2 or 3 writers just gathering together is considered an illegal assembly in this world. The very act of intellectual solidarity is criminalized.
And finally, the highest form of dissent.
Boldly writing social criticism. This was the path that Hayama, the former writer, avoided by quitting entirely. He confirms that direct intellectual dissent aimed at the regime is a guaranteed planting offense.
So the state makes no distinction. A postman complaining about his wage, a writer questioning the whole system.
Both result in permanent rooting. The outcome is identical.
And perhaps the most crushing part of this documentation is the utter lack of recourse.
None whatsoever. Man-pillars can't appeal their treatment. The system treats them as rooted resources, not as citizens with rights. And furthermore, any attempt by family members, like the narrator, who wants to help his wife, to advocate for them, or even just to complain about their treatment.
Like the assault on Michiko we'll get to.
Exactly. Any action like that would result in the family member being viewed as a problem person by the authorities, which is, just one step away from being planted themselves.
So this lack of recourse, it's a critical part of the state's psychological architecture.
Oh, absolutely. It isolates the vegetized person from their support network, and it actively punishes compassion. It enforces compliance not just from the victims, but from their entire social circle. The system is designed to make complicity self-regulating.
Now, I think we need to turn to the key individuals who are documented in this record. Their personal circumstances, they really serve as case studies in how this system functions, how it controls both the victims and the survivors.
We have to start with the primary witness, the chronicler himself, the narrator. His background gives us crucial context for his later psychological state. He's a writer.
But a specific kind of writer.
A very specific kind. He's dedicated to writing trivial entertainment pieces.
And this career choice, it creates this profound, documented psychological conflict in him.
A deep contradiction. He rationalizes his work. He tells himself, I can't write stories that might do harm or good. It can't be helped. But the record shows he suffers from immense self-contempt for continuing this facile work.
He sees quitting as the only real protest.
Yes. He views quitting writing entirely as the true gesture against society. A courageous act that he openly confesses he lacks the nerve to make. He is the definitive archetype of the self-aware survivor.
He knows the cost of his silence.
He recognizes it's his own spiritual agony, But he chooses inertia over action because the consequences of action are permanent and public. This is the mechanism by which the state ensures the continued function of its bureaucracy and its economy. It exploits the individual's lack of courage.
And yet, despite this political paralysis, his personal actions, they show a kind of defiance. It's motivated by anguish. He regularly visits his wife, Michiko.
He does. He acknowledges the danger. The man-pillar postman even warns him that it's better for both of them if he just forgets her faster.
But he can't.
He defies that logical, survival-oriented advice. He's driven by this profound inability to emotionally abandon his loved one.
And the document, it concludes his self-analysis with a really chilling realization.
By the end of this one day that's chronicled, he has begun to internalize the societal pressure so completely that he feels as if I was already a man-pillar myself.
So that's the ultimate cost of compliance. The survivor ends up psychologically vegetizing themselves. They become emotionally rooted, resigned, even if their body is still free.
That's it exactly.
Okay, next, let's analyze Hayama. The elderly gentleman the narrator meets, he's a former writer who worked under a pen name. His history is critical because he's an example of self-censorship taken to its absolute extreme.
Right. And his decision to quit writing, it wasn't based on some high-minded political conviction. It was based on comfort and, well, vanity.
He says so himself.
He confesses he was a dilettante who wanted to live a comfortable life and that he couldn't endure being exposed to the eyes of the world, ridiculed. He chose physical safety and social acceptance over his own intellectual convictions.
But the record captures his deep, documented regret over this choice.
It does. He admits that he sometimes wishes he had gone on writing social criticism and just been arrested instead. And this admission is critical.
Why?
It confirms that for this type of intellectual, the profound spiritual pain of self-censorship, of choosing comfort, it eventually outweighs the projected physical pain or public disgrace of vegetization. It's a paradox, but the ultimate freedom for him might have been found in resistance.
And he also had a personal connection to the system.
A very direct one. His dog, Hachi, became a dog pillar, and is now, at the time of the recording, a fully vegetized dog tree near the coast road. So Hayama is deeply integrated into this system, both as a survivor who compromised his intellect and as a former owner whose personal property was seized and converted into a state resource.
Let's move on to the man-pillar postman. His testimony is one of the most vital components of this entire record.
It really is. We know his basic function. He's male, about 35 or 36, and he's employed as a postbox for registered mail and special delivery. He is still serving the state's infrastructure.
And his crime?
His documented crime was simply stating that his pay was low and being overheard by his boss. It's a quintessential low-level economic infraction.
And he provides corroboration for this.
He does. He links himself to the two man trees right next to him, confirming they suffered the same fate for the same reason. This shows the uniformity of the state's application of the planting law. There's no nuance.
And his mental progression is revealing. It reveals the allure of the man tree state.
It really does. He desires to become fully vegetized quickly. He views the man tree state as a prominent release from sadness and from hunger. He's actively seeking depersonalization.
So he's accepted the system's logic completely.
He has. The system guarantees suffering as a conscious pillar, so the only path to peace is the complete resignation of consciousness. He is a functioning part of the landscape, literally a rooted employee whose primary activity is serving the state by handling mail.
He's the ultimate symbol of bureaucratic co-option.
The body used as infrastructure, the mind resigned to a plant-like status.
Finally, let's analyze the facts regarding Michiko, the narrator's wife.
Right.
Her documented crime was political dissent, but in a domestic setting.
Right, complaining about high prices and criticizing the government at a housewives' meeting.
And the mechanism of her arrest is so informative, she was informed on by one of the other women there.
Which just reinforces the systemic nature of citizen surveillance and denunciation that sustains the whole regime. Trust is eradicated. It ensures everyone polices everyone else, even in these informal domestic gatherings.
And her documented decline, it confirms the psychological effect of being planted.
The narrator observes it in real time. He notes that her expressions and her speech have lost a shade of delicacy. He says the range of her emotions has become impoverished. He is watching her emotional landscape just atrophy.
And this documented decline, it leads to the horrific realization of her complete dehumanization in the eyes of the public.
Yes, the account of the assault. Two drunks played a prank on her, which caused an injury resulting in blood. This act of violence, it's rooted in the public's belief, a belief sanctioned and encouraged by the state, that the pillars were no longer human.
So they're just public property.
Public property, subject to public malice with absolutely no recourse.
And the final, devastating image that's documented of her.
It's her expressionless smile, which the narrator compares to a carved image of Buddha, as she wishes her husband would just forget her.
And this is a conscious choice on her part.
It appears to be a deliberate, rational choice. She retains enough consciousness to prioritize his safety and his peace over her own memory, over their relationship. It is, in its own way, an immense act of love that's expressed through mandated emotional distance.
Okay, so having analyzed the mechanics of the system and the profiles of its victims, I think it's useful to follow the chronological sequence of the narrator's day, just as it's detailed in the document.
I agree. The progression provides a kind of narrative arc that moves from historical context to this chilling confrontation. It really maps the psychological impact of the regime on the survivor.
So the day begins with these morning encounters and realizations. He's in the park, and the discussion with Hayama establishes the historical baseline.
Right. They discuss the long-accepted reality of animal vegetization, dogs and cats being planted routinely for urban greenery. And they confirm the history of suppressed writers, which contextualizes the narrator's own inertia within this long tradition of intellectual compromise.
And then the first concrete evidence of the current regime's control comes at the post office.
Yes, the detailed interaction with the man-pillar postman. This is what confirms the specific, almost arbitrary, low-level infractions that lead to permanent vegetization, complaining about low pay.
And that confirms that economic dissent, regardless of your rank, is treated identically to political dissent.
No difference at all.
Following this, the narrator is forced to confront the inevitable trajectory of Michiko's fate. He sees the man-pillar outside the candy store. He's been planted for a year. This observation serves as a really pivotal psychological benchmark for the narrator.
And the record gives us a meticulous and frankly disturbing description of him. A young male, face brownish-green, his eyes are tightly shut. The transformation is well underway.
There are branches sprouting from him.
Branches sprouting from his body, young leaves budding from his arms. And crucially, he's now motionless. He's reached a state where, as the text says, his heart has sunk into the tranquil world of plants.
So this isn't just a description of a victim.
No, it's the visual blueprint of Michiko's immediate future. It forces the narrator to confront the reality that she will soon be lost entirely to him.
And this confrontation with that inevitable loss, it's what fuels the narrator's path to defiance.
It seems to be the catalyst.
Despite his own internal warning, which is screaming, "Don't go," at him, driven by the anguish of trying to forget her and the very real fear of being seen as a problem person, he just disregards that self-preservation instinct. He goes briskly down the street to see her.
And this is the moment. This is where his personal anguish overrides his political fear.
So he gets there, and the confrontation with Michiko's reality is documented with such stark detail. First, the atmosphere of complicity.
Yes, the hardware store mistress.
Right.
She sees him arrive, and she immediately feigns indifference and just retreats to the back of the store.
So it's a clear, documented example of that quiet societal compliance, the terror among regular citizens who just refuse to acknowledge the human tragedy happening right outside their door.
They just look away.
And the conversation he has with Michiko, it confirms her acclimation, her deliberate move toward depersonalization. She tells him, "I'm used to it." And she confirms her active choice to forego eating to accelerate her transformation into a man-tree. She is seeking that final release from pain and hunger. She is actively cooperating with the eradication of her own consciousness.
And then comes the discovery of the physical violation.
Yes. The narrator notices the dark bloodstain on her skirt, and he learns the account of the drunk's prank. This is the verifiable, documented moment where the state's legal and linguistic dehumanization of the pillars manifests as public physical abuse.
The public views them as non-human objects, and the lack of legal recourse validates that brutality.
It does.
And their parting is the emotional climax of the day. Michiko urges him to forget her, for his own safety and peace.
And in response, the narrator makes this one final desperate gesture against the crushing hopelessness. He promises to petition for her transplant to their garden once she's a full man-tree. So it's his final recorded act of defiance through care, a personal attempt to reclaim some ownership and dignity over what the state has seized.
A small, hopeful gesture against the inevitable.
The day concludes with the narrator trying to find some solace in a coffee shop. The Punch coffee shop. But even this refuge, it just immediately provides more evidence of the state's total control.
The environment itself serves as a constant conduit for information about the repression.
He overhears conversations. They're detailing the arrest of a critic who was planted smack in the middle of the Ginza, a prime public location.
And they also discuss the mass arrest of nearly 30 students who were protesting the critic's fate. The scale of repression is enormous, and the state uses the planting location itself to send a clear message.
A very clear one. The students, they confirm the group will be planted along their own students' road, which is already being renamed Violence Grove.
So the state is literally marking its total victory over dissent by renaming the landscape after the method of repression. It's permanently institutionalizing the punishment into the geography of the city itself.
And the record concludes with the narrator's profound personal transformation.
His resolution to drink black coffee.
Sugarless, creamless,
Yeah.
a calculated, self-imposed bitterness. It's a masochistic savoring of pain, and it reflects his psychological synthesis of this harsh new reality and his complete acceptance of his own complicity and resignation.
I think if we connect this historical record to the broader context of survival mechanisms, what the document offers is this chilling insight into life under total control. The system's true genius, if you can call it that, lies not just in eliminating dissidents,
No.
but in co-opting the spiritual and emotional pain of those who comply.
The psychological cost that's detailed throughout, particularly with Hayama and the narrator, it's this relentless self-contempt of those who choose compliance and self-censorship.
The central agony for the survivor is in remembering what was lost, the memory of freedom, the memory of love, the memory of one's own courage.
And this is directly contrasted with the pillars, isn't it? They achieve a kind of perverse peace through forgetting, through losing sensation.
Exactly. The postman and Michiko, they seek the total resignation of the Mantri state as a release from the agony of conscious suffering. The system has weaponized the human desire for peace against itself.
And the document ends with the narrator walking home, internalizing the lyrics of a popular song, and it defines his own fate and the fate of every resigned citizen in this society.
I am a wayside man pillar. You too are a wayside man pillar.
The society, in this final documented analysis, is comprised entirely of the physically vegetized, and those who are psychologically already rooted and motionless, just waiting their turn.
The distinction between the two is just one of biological degree, not of mental state.
So, after this comprehensive deep dive into this very difficult historical account, what does it force us to consider? This record compels us to analyze the ultimate personal consequence of choosing silence over resistance. It shows us that survival through inertia, it isn't free.
It costs the soul.
Yeah.
The document concludes with a final, stark description of the state of the resigned citizen. Dried grasses that never flower.
The dry grasses that never flower.
And that raises a final critical question for analysis. In a world where protest is punished by becoming a permanent fixture of the landscape, and where the self-contempt of the compliant is so profound, is the highest form of resistance simply the act of trying to remember the memory of freedom? Or is the only verifiable peace actually found in the Mantri state, making self-erasure the final bitter irony of this historical world? That's something profound for you to continue contemplating long after this discussion.
Thank you for joining us for this essential deep dive into this challenging historical record.
We hope this extensive analysis provides you with the crucial facts and context necessary to understand the mechanisms of control and of compliance documented in this unique period of history.